All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. And this video is not for any monetary gain. It is explicitly for the reasons stipulated in the Copyright Act of 1976 under Section 107.
I love when y'all add on to the information because this is absolutely correct. When the U.S. built highways in the 20th century, many of them ran through black neighborhoods. So Congress's Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 started this, authorizing the largest public works program in the U.S. It promised to construct 41,000 miles of an interstate highway system that would crisscross the nation. But the expansion, which happened between the late 1950s through the early 1970s, also came at the cost of destroying black neighborhoods. After the passage of the 1956 highway bill, the expansion of I-95, for example, went through Miami and led to the destruction of 87 acres of housing and commercial property in the Overtown community. Now, Overtown is one of those thousands of black communities that prospered we don't hear much about. Comprised of predominantly African Americans, the city of Overtown is the second oldest Miami neighborhood dating back to 1896. So what happened was when blacks from the South and the Bahamas came to work on railroads around Miami, they weren't allowed to mingle with the locals. You wasn't going to Miami Beach resorts, none of that. But you were segregated in an area they called Colored Town, which is Overtown. Overtown took off, as we usually do. We became successful. Cultural development mirrored the awakening of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 1930s, gaining Overtown the nickname the Harlem of the South. But despite Overtown's popularity, the I-95, I-395, and SR-836 construction forced locals to move out and abandon the city. According to Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America, only 8,000 of an estimated 40,000 remained in Overtown after the highway expansion. So blocked from moving into white neighborhoods, displaced residents were forced to crowd into nearby sections of the city already struggling with poverty and decay. And what happened to Overtown also happened to Black Wall Street. Remember, as we discussed in a previous video, it wasn't the massacre of 1921 that ultimately destroyed Greenwood, because Greenwood was rebuilt. It was integration and Interstate 244 in the 1970s, which ran right through the heart of Greenwood, destroying the Dreamland Theater, along with the hundreds of homes and businesses they had rebuilt, which got bulldozed and all of those things. In Atlanta, according to Princeton University historian Kevin Cruz, I-20 was designed to serve as a boundary between the black and white communities. Roughly 60,000 whites left Atlanta for the suburbs in the 1960s and another 100,000 in the 1970s. In Chicago, Robert Taylor was built at the same time, interestingly enough, as the Dan Ryan. They were both built around 1962. The 14-lane expressway kept the projects, comprised mostly of African Americans by the 1960s, on one side, and white communities they didn't want us in on the other.
This is Robert Taylor Homes, the largest housing project in the world, the poorest urban community in the United States.
In 1987, a documentary aired on TV called Crisis on Federal Street. In addition to saying it was the poorest urban community in the U.S., the host also mentioned Robert Taylor as being, quote, an attempt by the city government to constrain the black population of the city at that time to the smallest geographical area. Also, Robert Taylor was built on top of the State Street slums. Before the high-rises, before what we know as the projects, a lot of black people migrating to northern cities lived in slums, and the projects was built on top of the slums. But we will come back to Robert Taylor in a separate video. There is a lot to unpack. We need to talk about the man rock that the projects was named after, and I can also give personal accounts of what it was like having lived there. In summary, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation estimates, federal roadway construction displaced more than 475,000 households and more than 1 million people nationwide. And the neighborhoods destroyed and families uprooted by highway projects were predominantly black and poor.
How Route 290 destroyed black neighborhoods in Chicago. They didn't just build a highway, they ripped out the heart of black Chicago, Route 290, the Eisenhower Expressway. To some, it's just a way to get downtown faster, but to thousands of black families in the 1950s and 60s, it was a wrecking ball disguised as progress. They bulldozed homes, churches, businesses, entire communities, gone. Without warning, no hearings, no fair compensation, just eminent domain and bulldozers at sunrise. Neighborhoods like Garfield Park and Lawndale were thriving. Black-owned shops, jazz clubs, family homes passed down for generations. But they were in the way, so the city called it urban renewal. But we know what it really was: black removal. And don't think it was accidental. They didn't put that expressway through Lincoln Park. They didn't split up Beverly. They aimed it straight through the West Side because it was black, because they could. And what came after? Displacement, poverty, decay. Communities shattered into pieces, still trying to heal 70 years later. They say Route 290 connects the suburbs to the city, but it disconnected black families from their future, all in the name of development. So ask yourself, how many black dreams got buried under that concrete? Comment if your family was affected. Share this if you've ever driven the Eisenhower without knowing the blood beneath it. Follow for more Chicago stories they tried to pave over. Because history doesn't forget, and neither should we. Chicago's Bronzeville was the cultural capital for Black America until highways and renewal tore it apart. Bronzeville once thrived with jazz clubs, newspapers, Millionaires Row, and celebrated civil rights leaders. But after W. White, city planners labeled the area slums. Between 1950-66, over 23,000 families lost homes, 64% Mexican and black, to make way for the Dan Ryan Expressway and public housing. The expressway cemented a segregation line, cutting Bronzeville off from white neighborhoods and stripping away generational wealth by displacing homeowners with meager compensation. Black residents were forced into segregated high-rises with poor conditions. Urban renewal wasn't about progress, it was policy-driven destruction. Share to demand acknowledgement, restitution, and support for descendants. Follow this page for more black history in the Midwest.
Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and our fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashar Barzal, a prophet of doom from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. All right, before I get into this lesson, just once again want to declare fair use, according to the Copyright Act of 1976, as stipulated under Section 107. There's no monetary gain from this video. However, it is explicitly for the purpose of teaching and educating with regards to the scriptures. All right, and what you saw at the beginning of the lesson is a clip giving a history of, how a great number of U.S. highways destroyed Jake communities, and displaced them. No compensation for them, none whatsoever, because I'm sure the process did not change. You had to buy the land, number one, and you had to have a permit to construct on it. All right, absolutely no compensation for those. Total displacement, forcing Jake into terrible housing structures, so on and so forth. All right, and this went all over the United States, as the first video clip indicated. But I wanted to focus on the Eisenhower Expressway, as well as the Dan Ryan. Me being a Chicago native for the better part of my life before coming to Indianapolis. All right, yeah, Chicago is always home, no matter what. All right, but yeah, so I'm going to get into it. This is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 10, and it reads, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever." All right, and that violence is the violence that was at the hands of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man who is the wicked, according to Malachi 1 and 4. All right, the wicked. All right. When you go through the history, and like I said, you can look up any city. I just focus on those two because I'm very familiar with Chicago. But this went on all over the globe. As you saw in the video, it was a national project to run so many thousands of miles of roadway connecting the country. All right, at the expense of Jake's homes, without any restitution. Okay, so Esau, you got a lot to pay for, dude, a whole lot to pay for. First it was the man-made lakes. I mean the hatred, according to Amos 1 and 11, merciless hatred. No pity. It's just nonstop with you, Esau, and you got a lot to pay for. Just got to make it plain. A whole lot to pay for. All right. And it says, for thy violence. And, we know that, those lands, homes, churches, everything that they built wasn't taken fairly. It wasn't taken smoothly. You just moved them out of the way, bulldoze them, just like the video said. All right. And now that this history is coming out, like I said, shame is going to cover you. And you're mad. You're getting mad because people are finding out you are the Edomites. We've always known, but you want to be everybody else but who you are. That's why that shame is covering you. That's the one thing you don't like, is your own history. All right, but it's too bad it's coming out, no matter how much they try to cut off. And we know that it's inevitable with the famine of the word. So we're not surprised what's supposed to happen on August 13th with this platform. Not surprised at all. That just lets us know that we're closer and closer to that day. As Romans 13:11 says, our salvation is nearer than what we believe. All right, and we're just one step closer when you start to do the stuff that the scriptures already said you were going to do. All right. And like I said, right now, that shame is covering you. All right, everybody knows who you are. And you trying to separate yourself from Amalek. No, he is the head tribe of your nation. Amalek means the so-called Jewish people. You will not be able to separate from them. All right. You are the same nation. All right. Esau, Edom. Amalek being the direct grandson of Esau, Edom. All right. Via Eliphaz's concubine Timnah. All right. You can get that in Genesis 36. Yeah. You're of the same nation, no matter what. All right. You're all going. The whole nation is going to pay. And like I said, everybody despises you. As a matter of fact, I can go right up to the second verse. It says, Obadiah 1 and 2, Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Everybody knows Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, is the damn cancer of the entire earth. Okay? That's why you're mad. You know, nobody sees you as a standard anymore. Matter of fact, you've always been substandard, according to the scriptures. Job 30:8. You base man, more vile than the earth, the lowest in society. Now it's coming out. All right. Now it's coming out. All right. Back to that Obadiah 1 and 10. And it says, and thou shalt be cut off forever. All right. Which means, you know, once you finish your captivity, according to Revelations 13:9 and 10, you know, after you serve in captivity twice as long, twice as hard as we did, according to Revelations 18:5 and 6, you're going to be done away with permanently, to exist no more. That is your portion, according to the scriptures. All right. That's proven in actually in the same chapter, Obadiah 1 and 18. This is after we get into the kingdom. Okay. It says, and the house of Jacob, being the southern kingdom, shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. All right. That's the northern kingdom. And the house of Esau, all tribes of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, okay, for stubble. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai hath spoken it. All right. This is the Lord saying this, not I. All right. And we know, according to Isaiah 55, his word does not return unto him void. All right. You are fucking out of here. All right. For everything that you did after you served that punishment. All right. Now, getting back to these two roadways in Chicago, you know, you had the Eisenhower Expressway, which is I-290, named after an Edomite, former U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who had a major role in this global, national highway project connecting the United States from one end to the other, east to west, north and south. Okay, had a major role in that. You know, you can look that up. All right, and then you have the Dan Ryan, which runs into the Eisenhower. Okay, you can look up on that. As a matter of fact, I got two articles which preceded the stories. They were the cover pages for those articles. I'm going to put those articles in the description box so you can get more and more in-depth history on the I-290 or the Eisenhower Expressway and I-90, 94, the Dan Ryan Expressway. All right. So yeah, you'll have information on both of those. And speaking of Dan Ryan, he was another Edomite that this expressway was named after. He was the president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, and it was renamed after him shortly after his death. But you know, that's what they do. You know, destroy Jake's homes, belongings, and then rename it, you know, after themselves. This is the book of Psalms 49 and 11. And it reads, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They called their lands after their own names. All right. The lands, everything that they conquered, they named it after themselves, even the expressways. Okay. Even the expressways. And mind you, it was very clear, as we've talked about in the massacres of Jake, and taking other lands. The same thing with these highways. It is abundantly clear by now, Jake, that the U.S. government has had a direct hand, sometimes indirectly, in the demise of Jake. This is the same government you're asking reparations from. It's not going to happen. All right? They would say, like, well, there's no more people surviving. Okay, you had some survivors from the Tulsa massacre, 1921, Black Wall Street. Okay? It went to court. All right? Now, just to show you that they're hell-bent on not paying reparations. All right? The House put on the floor a House resolution number 4321. 4321. This is going on while the Tulsa reparations case is being reviewed. Okay? It's in the courts. All right? House resolution number 4321 basically says any state or municipality that puts forth legislation awarding reparations to the descendants of slaves will not receive any disaster relief. Okay, so like you just had in the cases with Texas, you had North Carolina last year. If either one of those states had to put forth legislation for reparations, they would not be getting any assistance from FEMA right now, especially with the person that's in office right now. Okay, and right after that House resolution hit the books, the judge from Tulsa, Oklahoma, came back and denied the reparations for those last few survivors. So, Jake, I don't know what to tell you. You keep begging the same people to help you out of the situation that they had a major part of putting you in. That's the definition of insanity by itself. Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You need to pick up a damn book and read, investigate, and see what's happening here. These are the people who will put us in the situation. We're over here because of our captivity. They are not going to help us. All right? You can get that out of your thick skull. Every time you build, they're going to try to destroy it. All right? Well, they did destroy it. Look at everything that happened after the Reconstruction period, after slavery was over. Everything you built up. All right? We just did a video a couple of weeks ago, about these whites-only neighborhoods, talking about the so-called blacks are jealous. For what? We don't want to be around you. We showed you that in the early 1900s. But you didn't like us being better. You couldn't fathom in your mind, as long as we had been in captivity, we had these immaculate neighborhoods. So you destroyed it. And that's part of the curses. They'll say we would never prosper in this land. All right? That's part of the curses. But Jake, you need to stop, begging these folks. They're not going to save us. All right? I never believed in it anyway. I can see it. A lot of you all just won't see it. All right? This is the book of Lamentations 4 and 17. And it reads, as for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. Okay? In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. Man, what do? You ask for reparations, what do? Give you the latest, give you a Juneteenth holiday, that you are already celebrating, which is not one of the official high holy days of the nation of Israel. So it's a vain one anyway. You know, no one else was in chattel slavery, but everyone benefits from it. All right, as a day off. You know, and to show you that it was a joke. You know, I remember when it was on the table to become a federal holiday. You know, Amazon and Walmart, were already selling shirts for it. 2 days before it happened, which tells you, all they want to do is profit off of you. All right. That holiday is not. And the people who take part of it, they like the day off, but they don't care about the history behind it. Juneteenth, which is another video within itself. The true day that the Emancipation Proclamation passed was January 1st, 1863. All right, you can look into that history on your own. So, just going to show you, they have no intention of doing right by Jake. That is their nature. Okay, he is a sword of the Lord, according to Psalms 17:13. And we're in this place on punishment. He is meant to destroy what we have. We are not supposed to prosper over here in this land. All right. This is the book of Micah, chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand." All right. It's in the power of their hand. Whose hand? The wicked. According to Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Who is the wicked? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. All right. Those pale, pasty cowards, okay, who thrive on attacking the vulnerable. And if they come against one with strength, they have to either outnumber him or outgun him. The pattern is clear who you are. You always attack the feeble. We exited Egypt. You didn't attack the men. You came up from behind like a coward and took out the feeble. Okay? That's what you do. All right? Verse 2. "And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage." All right? That's what they do. And that one there is a double fault. You took their houses. You took their land with those highways. Just took them. Just because you could. The power was in your hand. Even a man in a house and his heritage, you forced them in, with that displacement, you forced them into that subsidized housing where you always had control. Minimal upkeep. Those Robert Taylor homes, they're gone now. But yeah, that's what you did. Put Jake in the worst conditions. Just because you could, with those expressways. All right. It says even a man and his heritage. The small hatters are doing that right now. Saying you're the people of the book. The whole world sees that you ain't that. All right. But once again, Jake, these are the people put in charge of punishing us for our transgression, okay, against the law. We are not to prosper here in Babylon the Great, aka America. Point blank, period. Get it out of your thick skull. It's not going to happen. All the voting, all the marching, none of that shit is going to work. None of that shit has worked. Okay? None of it. They are responsible. Once you get that through your skull, that, the same people you're asking help from are the same ones who cause a problem for you. All right? They have a purpose. All right, and they're fulfilling it to the max to make sure that Jake does not prosper. All right, and like I said, we're on punishment here. This is the book of Baruch, which is in the Apocrypha. Baruch was a scribe for the prophet Jeremiah. You'll see his name mentioned often in the book of Jeremiah. This is Baruch chapter 2, Slakia chapter 3, beginning at verse 8. And it reads, Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us, for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from Yahweh our power. Okay, so that's what it is. All right, that's what it is. It's not going to happen. We're here serving out a punishment. Okay, why? It says, Hear, Israel, the commandments of life, and give ear to understand wisdom. Verse 10. How happeneth it, Israel, that thou art in thine enemy's land, that thou art waxen old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead? We're not at home. We're never going to make it here, prosper here in this place. There will be a few, but they show you Jake time and time again. When they get ready to snatch it from you, they will. You don't own your home. It could be completely paid for. Miss those taxes one time. They'll take it as faster than you saw it and wanted to buy it. All right. Verse 11. That thou art counted with them that go down into the grave. Verse 12. That thou hast forsaken Slakia. Thou hast forsaken the fountain of wisdom. Okay. We turned our ear from hearing the law. That's Proverbs 28:9. We turned our ear away from hearing the law. Therefore, our prayers would be an abomination. All right. Here's the point. Verse 13. For if thou hadst walked in the way of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, thou shouldest have dwelled in peace forever. Okay? Dwelled in peace forever. And there's a plethora of scriptures I can get. The only place where we're going to be at rest, dwell safely, and be at peace is in our homeland, Israel. Okay? Yasharallah. Our homeland. Not here in Babylon the Great. This place is on is on a clock that's ticking real fast. All right, as it's said, it's circling a drain real fast. It's going to be no more made a waste, desolate. All right, just like they made our homes at that time a waste and desolate, destroyed, bulldozed over. You won't recognize it. All right. Verse 14. It says, Learn where is wisdom with Yahushai. Where is strength with Yahushai? Where is understanding with Yahushai? That thou mayest also know where is the length of days and life. Where is the light of the eyes and peace with Yahushai. That's what we have to do. Micah 2:10 tells us, this place is not our rest, to arise and depart. Now, that doesn't mean to pick up and leave, but come out of the ways of Babylon the Great. Come back to the law, statutes, and commandments. You just told you how we got here, in verse 13. Because we didn't walk in the way with Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. All right? So we would have dwelled in peace. Where? In our land. All right? What is that land? You can get that in the previous chapter. Baruch 2. Go straight to the point. Well, I'll start at 30 because it lets you know we're somewhere else. Okay? It says, For I knew that they would not hear me because it is a stiff-necked people. Okay? Wouldn't keep the law, statutes, and the commandments. Wouldn't use that faith. But in the land of their captivity, they shall remember themselves. That's where we are right now. Okay? Knowing our heritage. You know, speaking into the ears of the people, speaking to the gates of the nobles, you know, letting them know, hey, our time has come. All right? We're about to go home. All right? Yahushua is coming back. All right? Verse 31. And shall know that I am Yahweh their power, for I will give them a heart and ears to hear. Verse 32. And they shall praise me in the land of their captivity and think upon my name. Okay? Name of the Father, Yahweh, He exists, meaning He exists, He to be. Bahashem, meaning in the name. Yahweh Shai, the name of the Son, meaning He saves, He delivers. Okay? Verse 33. It says, and return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds, and they shall remember the way of their fathers which sinned before the Lord. Okay? And just what the last passage of scriptures I read in Baruch 3. Okay? He says, and I will bring them again into the land which I promised with an oath unto their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, where is that land? Okay, you get that answer in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. You know, it's from the great river of Egypt, which is the Nile, all the way over to the Euphrates. Okay, the slither of the land, you know, that's being occupied by Benjamin Netanyahu and his people. That's actually the headquarters, as outlined in Joshua, the book of Joshua, chapters 13 through 22. That's not the entire land. Okay, which, you know, is another cut to those small hatters over there, because everyone outside of that area, explained in Joshua chapters 13 through 22, you are at war with. You know, you don't have that land. Thus again, proven you are the imposters. You know, you are the imposters who took, you know, who took the headquarters. You know, and hey, you know, all the heathen has part of that land. You get that in Ezekiel chapter 36. All right. So yeah, He will bring them to the land which He promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they shall be lords of it, and I will increase them, and they shall not be diminished. Okay, we will not be brought low again, being in our own land. Okay, outside of that, we're in the land of strangers, just like Baruch chapter 3 said. All right, so Jake, get it through your thick skull, you know. But yeah, hey, it's like this. We're at that point now, especially what's supposed to happen on August 13th with this platform. The time is coming, you know, the famine of the word. If you don't have it by now, you ain't got it. You know, the Lord ain't dealing with you. Point blank, period. All right. It says, verse 35, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them to be their power, and they shall be my people, and I will no more drive my people of Israel out of the land that I have given them. All right, that's the only place where, once again, we're going to dwell safely, be at peace, you know, and never be ashamed. You know, once we, you know, come into the kingdom, that's the only time it's going to happen. All right, but yeah, but back to these devils. I mean, you got to pay for what you did. All right. This is the book of Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, depending on how you say it, chapter 2, verse 12. And it reads, woe, meaning destruction, to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establish a city by iniquity. That's just what he did. That's exactly what he did. When he just took those homes, stealing, you know, sure, murdered in one way, shape, or another, you know, didn't pay him for his land. Once again, you know, they're just not gonna let you have that land without paying for it. You know, not paying taxes on it. not having the correct permits to build on it. That's just the way it works. But they just took it without any restitution for any of those things. All right, and created a highway. All right, but once again, you're gonna have to pay for that. You know, I'm gonna get this in Job 20. I'm just gonna hit the points in the scriptures. Book of Job, chapter 20, starting at verse 15. It says, he has swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai shall cast them out of his belly. So yeah, everything that you stole, you're going to have to return, you know, with interest. All right. Sliding down to verses 19 and 20. Because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violently taken away an house which he builded not. Okay. You destroyed everything that they built in those neighborhoods. Schools, churches, you know, homes, you know, stores, anything that had them as a self-sustaining community. You took it in and you destroyed it. All right. Verse 20. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. Yeah, you're going to give up every damn thing. All right. And it's scaring you right now. You know, just a little bit of equality, you know, got you crashing out. You know, now you know what it's like not to be employed for months on end. You know, just saw a video the other day, a woman that hadn't been employed for 9 months, and she proud. You know, that's that Edomite arrogancy. You know, because her interview was delayed, and now she's proud. To forget it. All right, you ain't got no work. Point blank, period. But once again, you know, same thing with this devil. You know, you about to feel the wrath of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. Okay, sliding down to verses 27 through 29, and it says, "The heaven shall reveal his iniquity." That's what's happening right now. Okay, all of your terrible history against Jake is being revealed. You know, 24/7, 365, around the clock, in all different languages on this platform. Okay, and the earth shall rise up against him. Look at what's going on the earth. You know, all these volcanoes, earthquakes. You know, garbage in space, garbage in the sea. You know, like the scriptures said, you know, it shows you go all the way back to Cain. You know, the earth shall not yield its increase. You know, even the earth hates your ass. All right. It says, the increase of his house shall depart, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. Yeah, you about to lose everything, Esau. Going into slavery, according to Revelations 13:9 and 10. You're going to have continual employment, except on the Shabbat. All right. It says, this is the portion of the wicked man from Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, and the heritage appointed unto him by Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. Manifest Destiny has a part 2, Esau Edom. You know, for everything that you've done to Jake on this soil, you're gonna have to pay for it. All right. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 2. It's in the Apocrypha. And it says, chapter 10, verse 8. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. All right. And that's what's happening right now. You know, we're starting to see that transfer. You know, those curses are starting to be lifted off of Jake. Okay. According to Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 7. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming, Esau. Manifest Destiny definitely has a part 2. All right. And you ain't gonna like it. but too damn bad. All right. We will be the new rulers on this earth. You know, 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Yeah. And I'll close out with this. This is out of the book of Daniel, just to prove again. It's all coming down to Jake 7 and 18. And it reads, "But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever." Yep. "And you will be in servitude, Esau, Edom, for what you did to Jake. Twice as long and twice as hard." And like I said, Obadiah 1 and 18, once that servitude is up, you know, you try to exterminate us from the planet Earth, well, it's actually going to be you. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule well, and teaching me this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth. To you, we say Shalom, Kwam Yasharallah, Abba Babal. Shalom, we got next, permanently.